Hey, this is Dave from the Character Animator team, and welcome to another episode of Tips and Tricks. This one's for March 2017, and today we're going to devote most of this episode to the community spotlight because the things you guys are creating, they're unbelievable. From everything from cartoon Twitch live streaming characters to use of 3D and using that to make these liquid morphing metal creations, all the way to some unique styles that I haven't quite seen before with Character Animator creations. So we're gonna spend a lot of time looking and digging into all of those. Then I'll move on to how to create a custom mouth set. A lot of times we see the same mouths used over and over again. A lot of people have asked, I want to make my own mouths, but I've never done custom lip sync before. How do I make them? How do I line them up? That sort of thing. And I just went through this process redoing Red Monster's mouths, and I'll show you exactly how I went through that process. And then we'll finish up with just some quick tips, about 2 or 3 minutes, just going through shortcuts, little tips, things you might not have known how to do to get around the app a little bit faster and smoother, and hopefully they're helpful for you. So let's get started. So earlier this month, I was checking out my Twitter feed, and I noticed this one guy named Scribbleh who said he was doing Twitch streaming using Character Animator. And so I jumped into his channel just to check it out, and I'm so glad I did, because it just so happened on this day that he had just been featured by the official Twitter stream and all that stuff, and was just getting bombarded by visitors. I mean, he was getting thousands of followers. His stream was just continually playing all these notifications. It was hilarious to watch. But it was well deserved, because he created this very cool animated character that he was live streaming with. This cool guy with a TV head, and has all these little features to him. He can make fire appear. He can do all these animations. He can dance. Just a very cool, complex character, and people responded really, really well to it. And so I actually reached out to him, and we've been talking back and forth a little bit, and I asked him, did you have tips on how you set up this character? And so he wrote me, I control the puppet on a touchscreen laptop with multi-touch, and I have the puppet up against a green background so I can key him out in OBS. So he was talking about OBS Studio and doing green screen keying. We are working on a feature, I should say, to remove, basically allow you to do the same thing you can do on a Mac currently with Siphon for Windows. So that is coming, and hopefully that'll eliminate that step in the future. But he continues, I have face expressions mapped to 3 pedals on the floor, so I can instantly express my emotions in the middle of the game without moving my hands. I use a custom-made on-screen toolbar with custom buttons that are mapped to different hand shapes and effects. The puppet is a very big Photoshop file built upon daily over the course of 2 months. And I do little things like swap out the t-shirt for every stream. And I think those little things, I think that is the key for this character, is he has all these little hidden animations and key triggers and the t-shirt switching and stuff like that. That creates an element of surprise. And I think that's something that we see more and more with these live animated characters, is the more animations and surprises and things that you can throw out for your character to do, the more that your viewers will be engaged and kind of be waiting for that next surprise or that next thing that you do. Because with a cartoon character, the possibilities are endless, right? Your head could explode. You could turn into a vampire. You can, take over half the screen and become a giant, blob monster. Any of those are possible. And so if you keep the audience guessing and keeping them engaged like that, it leads to some really cool things. So Scribbleh has really started a movement, because after him, I'm starting to see way more Character Animator animated characters, and we're seeing a lot more questions come in for this sort of thing. So thank you, Scribbleh, for kind of spreading the word of Character Animator out there. And he is currently doing some great streaming with Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I've been checking that on a daily basis. So he's doing some awesome stuff with that. So congrats for all the success, Scribbleh, and we look forward to seeing you continue do some awesome work in the future. So here's another example from our friends at digitalpuppets.co.uk. We've been featuring them quite a lot because they just keep on making awesome stuff. And here's yet another example of that, where they've created a character for a game streamer, and he had a requirement to not use any keyboard triggers to do those special animations. So, normally these sort of things we see, all right, you press the A key or the Y key or 1 or whatever, and it does a certain animation. Well, this guy, he was probably holding a controller or didn't have access to this or something like that. And so Digital Puppets came up with an idea, a way to trigger animations by doing head turns. So actually, as you turn your head, that triggers certain animations to play out. And this is a really smart way to get around it. So all you have to do in the puppet panel is basically, find the animations that you want and then tag them with the different head turn positions. And then those will play those animations as you turn around. They've got a YouTube tutorial all about this, so I'll link to it in the show notes in the description below. But very cool stuff and just an innovative way to trigger an animation. Here's another creation from Digital Puppets. This one was created for a YouTube user named MassPast. And basically, this is a 3D mask, gold mask that they created in Maya, I believe was the 3D program they made it in. And then they exported each of the individual states as layers in Photoshop and then put them together to create this really compelling figure. And so the thing I love about this the most is just how fluid the mouth is in particular. I think they did an excellent job. It just looks like it's morphing. It's kind of got that liquid metal feel. It feels like this is actually done in 3D. And if anyone could figure out how to do 3D in Character Animator, it would be Digital Puppets. But basically behind the scenes, here's how they did it. So every single visime, every single mouth shape has a cycle layers animation behavior applied to it. So for example, the D, if I twirl this down, it shows actually 4 layers that it's cycling through every time I say a D sound. And over here in the cycle layers, note what they've done. They've done forward and reverse, hold on last layer, and on trigger in, let cycle finish, which means every time I'm saying that sound, it's going to play back and forward and reverse through this sequence. And so you may miss another sound in the process of doing that, but it's not going to jump and look choppy. It's just going to look fluid. And so when that picks up that next visime, that next sound, it's going to move to the next one. So that was a stylistic choice that they've done. I haven't seen it quite done like this before, but I think the results work really well for what they're going for. Now, they've added a few extra key triggers and stuff. So like if I press A, the eyebrows raise a little bit. I can also smile or look surprised, and it will react accordingly. And then the secret behind the scenes, you may have noticed in the puppet panel there were some evil folders there. So if I press the D key, the whole thing changes to an evil devil mask type thing. And all the animations are still working and doing their really cool stuff. And then you can morph back. So just mind-blowing. I mean, I don't know what kind of factory these guys were made in, but the stuff they're doing and the way they're pushing Character Animator is just inspiring and awesome. And I hope you found this as cool as I did. I love this puppet that was sent in to us by a Twitch streamer named Moose. And he's doing both gaming streaming as well as creative streams where he is showing how he's creating this character and the process of making it work with Character Animator. And I've tuned in a few times and it's funny. We've done like a live customer support chat with different questions and issues he's had. But this is a great character because he's got all these different hats that I'm key triggering. I'm just pressing the number keys right now. And so he's got these different costumes. So depending on what game he's playing, at any given time, he may want to wear a particular outfit. So, viewers get to know and love this one character, but then he has kind of this variety. And so every day you show up to the stream, you never know what you're going to get or what he's going to do, which is a really smart idea. I think he also drinks beer if you press the E key and then R makes it go in his mouth and all that stuff. One interesting thing that I saw that I really liked and was wondering how he did it was when you press the S key. Notice so he's always got this sword on his back, but when I press S, he raises his hand, he grabs the sword, and then you have full control over being able to drag the sword and move it around, cheering in victory or whatever you want to do. And then you press S again, and it goes back into the hilt in the back or whatever. So the way he did this was 2 simultaneous S key triggers that he did. And so the arm itself, he's got all these variations of the arm, a point, a wave, a victory pose, all this stuff. But then the sword is a 14 frame cycle layers animation. So when he presses the S key, it's going to play through that sequence and stop on the last layer that he has there. And that is the held state with the draggables and the sticks and all that stuff that's going to show up. It'll show up invisible here because it has the first frame of the state, but you get the general idea. And then when he presses S again, it's going to reverse and go back to its original fixed state. But the problem with that is, how is the sword on his back going to go into his hand and be held and then, have this kind of in-between sequence? There's no easy way to do that. So what he did was have the sword background element on his back as a separate piece down here. And so that's called sword fixed. And then he's got this sword disappearing sequence. That's the same thing, a cycle layers frame by frame thing, but only the first frame is actually shown. So the sword only shows up for this first state, and then as he goes through the other states, it disappears. It's actually just a pixel that's hidden behind the character for each of these extra frames of the animation. And then when it reverses, it's going to go back. The previous animation of him dragging the sword around is going to go back into his hilt, and then it'll end on this initial layer that has the sword back to its original position. So it's a really smart way, and we've shown this kind of as an example before with dealing with interacting with objects, but basically you can cycle multiple things and have things appear and disappear and move from one hand or back or the head or other parts to other positions by just doing some tricks like Moose is doing right here. So basically, there's almost always a way to do what you want to do. It may be complex. You may have to think about it a little bit, but there are solutions to almost any problem you can think of in Character Animator, and that leads to some pretty exciting possibilities. Moose also sent along about a 3-page document about how he streams and what his process is. If you have any questions at all about this sort of thing, he's probably a great resource to go to. But he said, I use a MacBook Pro to run Character Animator and then use a capture card for me, a USB 3.0 AverMedia Live Gamer Extreme, to send the MacBook screen to the streaming or gaming PC. Then I use OBS to stream. So one of his recommendations is not doing Character Animator and your gaming on the same machine, because both of those are kind of high performance requirements. And if they're both on the same machine, something's going to suffer. And if you're doing a stream, you want your performance to be as nice as possible. So he's actually doing his Character Animator capturing and all that stuff on the one, using the capture card, USB 3.0, to bring it over to the streaming PC, and then doing that and compositing it together with OBS. So great technique. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him at his Twitch channel. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to help you. So we've been showing several live examples today of Character Animator being used for live animation, but I wanted to spotlight a few recorded pieces as well. And this one, Wiggly and Woogly, the monsters from Moogly, was sent to us by a company called London Tinker. And I just love the style of this. It just has a really nice illustrated look, and it just goes to show, you can bring anything into Photoshop and, your own unique illustrated style and start applying some tags and things to it, organize it in a way that works with Character Animator, and you can get some really, really nice results. So I love seeing kind of this storybook, children's book feel to animation, and I think this is a really successful short piece that does a really nice job of having a unique voice and style. And finally, this is an example sent in by Greg Fish with gnpi.org. And I love just this combination of adding cartoon characters with, green screen live actors and then illustrated backgrounds. You can kind of combine all these elements together to create interesting pieces. In this case, this is the piece they were doing for kids to kind of teach them about what their organization is doing recently. And the cartoon characters, Liam and Ruby, really help make that approachable. And they say funny things. Liam makes fun of Ruby a few times, and there's some funny back and forth between them and the presenter. And I just love this kind of interaction and seeing the creative possibilities of what people are doing. And, particularly with Dynamic Link now, with Character Animator and After Effects and Premiere Pro, it's easier than ever to do these sort of mixed app, mixed media type of things. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this type of stuff in the future. But for now, this is a really nice and fun example. For the recent Red Monster Live broadcast, I edited Red Monster a little bit. So you'll notice on the left was the original, on the right is the new one. And I changed the spikes, added a little shading, a few other things. But the main difference, the main thing that I spent the most time on was his mouth. And I'll show you the difference, because this beginning part, so this is how he used to look. And the mouth is, getting the syllables as I would expect. So the mouth is doing the shapes. It looks okay. But notice how jumpy it is. Notice how much the mouth is kind of moving around from, kind of a flat pancake version to a circle to lines to... there's a lot of movement within the mouth. And it's working okay. It's a particular style of lip sync, and it's all right. But I wanted kind of a smoother effect. And so I enlisted the help of my friend Dave, who's a professional animator, and he had some great advice on helping refine Red Monster's mouth. And so this is now what we came up with. And I think this looks a lot better, a lot more professional, a lot smoother, and things just feel a little bit not as jumpy, but it feels more like you would see in a more professional animated cartoon. So let's dig into Photoshop and see some of the tips of how we did this exactly. All right, so the main piece of advice that I learned that really helped with this was locking the top jaw, which means those white teeth, that line of white teeth, that's staying consistent with every single state that they show up in. So for example, if I go between ah and notice how the white line is essentially staying in the same place, and it's really just the bottom of the mouth that's popping open. Even if I go to the O shape, which is much smaller, notice how those teeth are in line with the original teeth. So the biggest piece of advice, and I think that the biggest single factor that helped Red Monster look a little bit better, was keeping that top jaw locked. And in every one of these views that the teeth show up in, that's what's happening. So here's a good way to lay out your mouths and kind of see how they all work together. I could bring a guide down and see, exactly how the top row of teeth are always lining up, and that's looking pretty good. But also notice how you're kind of going from closed to open. So I'm starting with the sound closed, and then slowly opening more and more as I get to ah, and rabbit gets smaller and back to an O shape. And then frog and llama are kind of weird. Frog, you're biting the lip. Llama, you're kind of got a curled tongue. But this is a great way to see the relationship between mouths, and it's a great way to work on the custom mouth. So start with the closed state and then slowly open more and more, and save that as something. Try it out in Character Animator, see how it looks, come back. There's going to be a lot of trial and error with creating custom mouths. And that's just how the process is. It's going to take a while. It's not going to work 100% right the first time. You're going to want to edit it. A lot of times I'll go to my character and I'll say, okay, how does ah to look? Okay, that's looking all right, but maybe I want the to be a little bit tighter like that. I'm using free transform there, and just constant interactions like that to get it just right. But that hard work will pay off, because at the end, then you've got a mouth set that you can reuse over and over again for your characters. If you look at any cartoon show out there, you'll notice that there's some differences, but for the most part, the lip sync for a lot of characters looks very, very similar. They're using very similar lip sync charts like this to figure all this stuff out. So at the very least, you're creating a great foundation for future characters. So bottom line, it's a lot of time and effort, but it will be well spent and you'll get great results from it. Now, as far as creating mouths, that's really going to depend on your own style and your, Photoshop or Illustrator skill set. I'll just show you kind of how I went about it, primarily using the pen tool in Illustrator. And you'll see if I kind of take apart all these layers, I had this line that I kind of kept consistent for where the teeth would be, and that kind of shows up in almost every single view. And then around that, I would draw using the pen tool, this mouse shape. So basically, if you went over to the pen over here and made sure it was like this, and just kind of dragged and brought it up like this, and this is not the best, this is a very quick version of it, but I'm giving you an idea, and something like that. And then what I can do is, once I've got that, bring down my teeth, and if they're not looking so good, I could modify where the edges are, that sort of thing, to make sure it lines up and it looks pretty good. Then I bring in the black background for the bottom, and then a tongue as well. And of course I could shrink this, and I like Illustrator for this sort of thing just because it's really easy to scale and manipulate these vector graphics, and you're doing a lot of tweaking of the corners and that sort of thing with your different elements to get it looking just right. But it's all about what you feel comfortable with. If you feel more comfortable working in Photoshop, work in Photoshop. If Illustrator feels better to you, go that route. I think it's whatever is going to get the result that you're looking for and you're going to be able to work the easiest in. All right, it's getting late. I put my glasses on, but we're going to get through this. The final section today are just really quick tips and tricks about some shortcuts and secrets and things that I do on a daily basis to help me get around Character Animator. And maybe you haven't seen these. I can't believe you didn't read Help Doc page number 27 to find all this out, but maybe some of these will be helpful to you as well. So to start off here, if you've got a lot of behaviors, so face, eye gaze, all that stuff, different states, and you just want to isolate one, an easy way to do this is actually on Mac, press Command click on one of these, or on Windows that's Control click, and you click on that and on one of those dots, and it turns them all, disarms them all at the same time, or the same thing will arm them all at the same time. And so that's an easy way to, okay, I'm going to command click this to turn them all off, and then I'm just going to do eye gaze. And then, okay, I want to get them all back on again. All right, something else. A lot of times you're switching between your scene and your puppet, and you can do that a few ways, right? You can go up to the tab up here. You can go to your project panel and double click it. Another way, though, is in your timeline, you can actually double click any puppet down here, and that will bring up the puppet panel as well. So if you have multiple elements in a scene, for example, this is an easy way to go to that particular one that you're looking for. In addition, this little blue title up here allows you to see the most recent puppets or scenes that you've been working with. So when I'm in the puppet panel, I see the most recent puppets that I've been working with, and when I'm in my scene panel, I see the most recent scenes I've been working with. So this is an easy way to move around them and get back and forth instead of hunting over in the project panel for exactly where they are. So with this next tip, some of you may have done this on accident before and wondered how you got here, but one way to isolate a group inside a puppet is to just double click it. So for example, I've got this Cycle Layers fireball animation that I want to take a closer look at. I just double click it here in the layers, and there I am, and I can see it, and I can check out my cycle layers and make sure everything's okay. And then on Mac I press Command W, and on PC that's Control W to close it and go back to the original puppet file. So I do that a lot to go into, if I have a really complex character and it has several layers deep of group structure, that makes it a little bit easier to dig into individual elements. Now sometimes you may run into a few bugs when you are syncing your project back and forth between your Photoshop or Illustrator file and Character Animator, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you. It happens to me sometimes where your head falls off or your arms lose their position or something like that. And so we're working on fixing those bugs, but in case that does happen to you, one thing you may want to try is right-clicking the layer and going to Reset Layer. And if you do that, it will try to revert back to the original way that layer was. And so that should solve a lot of those out of sync problems if you have them. Just right click, reset layer, and that should help a lot. And then finally, if you're using OBS to stream, or any streaming software for that matter, and you're doing a live stream, one thing you should focus on and explore a little bit is having some sort of lip sync delay. All these programs are going to have, and all the streaming is going to have a little bit of a delay, and to make that lip sync look as good as possible, in OBS I just go to this little mixer icon here, and that takes me to my advanced audio properties, and then I change the sync offset to 200 milliseconds. And for me and for the Red Monster Live thing that I did a few weeks ago, that worked best for this character. And the way I figured that out was I pressed this little start recording button down here, and that saves a local copy, just kind of a test run to your desktop. And so you can try, for 30 seconds, talk and see if everything looks okay, then go back, adjust those that sync delay, sync offset, see if that works well, try it again, and keep doing it until you feel like the lip sync is lining up well. So it's a bunch of quick tips, rapid fire, but hopefully something in there was useful. All right, that's it for this month's episode. Thank you very much for watching. And if you happen to find yourself in Las Vegas at the end of next month of April, then please stop by the National Association of Broadcasters Conference, the NAB show, over there in the convention center. And Adobe will have a booth there, and Character Animator will have a demo station in the back. Myself and a few other people from our team will be there demoing Character Animator, answering questions. It's always great to meet people who have seen these videos, so please stop by, say hi, tell us what you're working on, and it would be great to see you there. In the meantime, if you have any questions, concerns, issues, bug reports, feature requests, blah, 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 all that stuff, please go to the official Adobe Character Animator forums. That's the best place for you to get help. You can link your files there, share them. We'll try to help you out as best we can with any issues you may be having. That's it for today, though. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.